When you're alone and life is making you lonely, you can always go downtown, downtown. I'm not gonna do the rest because I can never remember the words. Welcome back to StillerBros at the movies, and if our voices are terrible today, it's because one of us brought a cold into the house and we're not sure who.
Yep. So we're gonna be hacky and sound like crap the entire episode.
Hooray!
Yeah.
But anyway, what are we talking about today? Well, there's this little movie called Last Night in Soho that is coming out. That is directed by a little-known indie director from all the way in England named Edgar Wright.
Yes. We talked about Edgar Wright 6 whole years ago, guys.
Briefly 4 years ago.
How
long ago was that? Well,
Kevin Spacey's freaking awesome. Well, I'm fucking canceled. Thanks a lot, dickhead.
Yeah, you kind of are. Anyway, so now that it's just my show.
Anyway, Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright is, if you don't know, is the director of such movies as such modern comedy classics as Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and most recently the action comedy Baby Driver, starring not gonna
touch pretty much any of those people right now.
A lot of them are good, but 2 of them kind of got some issues.
Yeah. So
anyway,
we have this time around Last Night in Soho, which is a thriller. So we're taking a completely different genre for Edgar.
Because up until this point, everything he's made has had at least a tinge of comedy, but now, not so much. They can't even say that there's a... So, leading us to question, what the hell is going on with Edgar Wright? Well, for one thing, the title of this movie came from a suggestion from Quentin Tarantino, who said that the song Last Night in Soho is one of the best song titles that could be a movie title that's never been made, so Edgar Wright made it.
Yes. Also, Edgar has made this is actually Edgar Wright's second movie that has come out this year. The other one being the Sparks Brothers documentary that he put out earlier this year.
Which we have not seen because we don't really jump at the chance for documentaries.
Yeah.
But now Edgar Wright is dipping his toe into the horror pool, which means the horror thriller pool, which means it's time for us to talk about why this channel does not have any horror movie reviews on it until this point. We are fucking pussies.
Yeah, we're not the guys you take to a horror movie.
Now, the fact of the matter is, it's not that we hate horror movies. We understand that when a good horror movie is good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad. We understand what makes a good horror movie. But the fact is, we don't like being uncomfortable in a movie theater.
We don't like being scared. And there's a reason why we waited until we were at home with all the lights on in the broad daylight to see Jordan Peele's movies.
Yeah. We've seen very few horror. We know many horror movies by reputation, but we've seen very few. Basically, we could count on one hand the number of horror movies that we have seen, enjoyed, and that's Get Out, Us, Cabin in the Woods. Off the top of my head, that's about it.
I mean, I've seen Halloween, but that was like the AMC television version with commercials and crap, so it wasn't all that scary.
But yeah, we don't want. But yeah, it's not that we dislike that we see the ads for the next big horror movie and we automatically are like, that's gonna suck. That's going to suck. We're not gonna see it. It's just that It's just that if we're going to see a horror movie, we like to be 100% in control of our environment. We want to be in We want to be in controlled. We want to be in light. We want to be in our home, a place that that we are already well and comfortable with. We want to be able to. We want to be at the top floor of our dwelling, and we would prefer it to be during the day so that we're not freaked the fuck out next time the phone rings.
So why are we seeing this particular creepy thriller movie, kind of psycho thriller, in a movie theater in the nighttime?
Well, really it's because of the strength of Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
We haven't seen all of Edgar Wright's movies. We've missed. We have not seen The World's End, beginning to end. We haven't seen a single episode of. We haven't even been bothered to track down a single episode of Spaced. But the fact is that that all the movies we've seen of his we've liked makes us just think, yeah, okay, we'll see this movie. It'll be weird, but it'll be a little weird, but maybe it won't be too terrifying. And plus on top of that, it's got a pretty damn stacked cast. We've got Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie as the two main leads.
We have Matt Smith and the late Diana Riggs in her final performance.
And Terrence Stamp. Kneel before Zod, motherfuckers! So the cast is stacked. Edgar Wright is a fantastic director. He has a fantastically well-established co-writer, even though this is like her second fully produced movie.
She's already linked to Taika Waititi's Star Wars project.
And she was the writer of 1912?
1917.
1917? Okay. Yeah, it's just the movie. But yeah, we're looking forward to this because it's just kind of, it's Edgar Wright, it's fun, it's going to be cool. Hopefully it'll be cool, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's pretty much all we got. It looks fun. It looks creepy as all hell because there's time travel in the 1960s in Soho, all that stuff. So I think that's about all we can say right now. So we will see you guys after the jump. And so, that was fucking terrifying.
I'm traumatized.
Yay!
I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight because the quiet and the dark are terrifying the shit out of me right now.
So, but the thing about this movie is that it's also kind of hard to talk about because there are twists and turns and things in there that we can't go too deep. We need to try very hard not to go too deep into without going into very deep spoiler territory. So we'll just say a few things.
We're just gonna tread lightly here, but let's start with the fact that Edgar Wright does some really interesting stuff with the way he goes about this movie in particular.
First of all, Edgar Wright there's this thing that I say about The Holiday. I know I'm going to a weird place, but so in The Holiday, Jack Black has this thing, is playing under a different kind of comedic role, but he's still very much, but you can still tell in the way that he moves, the way that he reacts to things, that he's still very much Jack Black. Edgar Wright, while directing this, is still very much Edgar Wright. He has the transitions, the movements, everything, the way that the characters react, the way that certain things bleed into each other. That's still Edgar Wright's directing style. It's just that he's playing it for fear rather than comedy.
And part of it is that for the first 25 minutes or so, Edgar Wright kind of jettisons his normal style and plays very subdued, very basic with his direction.
Granted, he's not exactly going to certain wells. Like that whole thing where Edgar Wright where rather than do a series of establishing shots, he'll do a different kind of travel montage. That's in the first 5 minutes.
That's in the first 25 minutes. But once we get to the 60s, stuff that takes place in the 60s, that's when we get to, oh, there you are, Edgar. Nice of you to show up.
And it's kind of interesting to see a movie that with Edgar Wright's name on it that's so unfunny on purpose.
There's not a lot of comedy to it, which is not to say that it's bad because of that. It's just, it's the first time we've seen an Edgar Wright movie that's not that is not leaning on comedic sensibilities.
Granted, there's a lot of Edgar Wright's usual sensibilities are in there. Like, pay attention to just about everything, and you'll see that somehow it'll tend to come right back around.
Yeah. I feel like one thing I feel about this movie is that I feel like Krysty Wilson Cairns, the co-writer of this movie, I feel like a good chunk of her participation, of her incorporations in the early parts of the script anyway. I feel like a good chunk of her contributions was just taking some of the skeevy stuff that have been said to her in bars and putting it into the script, because God, was it uncomfortable to see some of that stuff on screen.
And really, I think a lot of that was also the fact that I think Edgar Wright specifically wanted a female co-writer just so that he could do believable things. Because I think Edgar Wright is aware that one of his biggest weaknesses as a writer and a director is that his female characters don't really get fleshed out. They're typically either a background character in the likes of Hot Fuzz or something like that, had a goal or a kind of a goal to be attained, like in Shaun of the Dead and Scott Pilgrim. Here, this is Ellie is the focus, and for the record, one of my absolute favorite things about this movie is Thomasin McKenzie's performance.
She is so effective in so many ways. She has to run the gamut of everything in this movie, and she just nails it home in every conceivable way.
She plays the character of Ellie as this innocent kind of girl next door, but she's not naive. She's not just fresh off the bus from a small town. I'm gonna be friends with everyone. No, she's right away very aware that people are terrible to her. She is clearly not going to be like, I'm gonna turn this around.
She's well aware. She's gonna try to make the best of her situation in the big city.
She's innocent, but she's so innocent that she's not gonna be. That when people push her around, she's not gonna be able to do anything about it.
We have Matt Smith and Terrence Stamp, who are both effectively creepy in the roles that they need to be in.
Anya Taylor-Joy is fantastic as a 60s femme fatale for the first part of her performance, and then for the second part of the performance having to be a bit more defensive is the right word? No. I'm trying to think, but
like she has her guard up. She just like jams her guard up and is more reserved and standoffish. And I think would be the word to say.
The thing is, in the beginning, when we first see Anya Taylor-Joy's character Sandy, we see her as this kind of confident, I'm gonna take on the world, pretty much the exact opposite of Ellie. I'm gonna take on the world. I'm gonna be confident. I'm going to start my life. My life begins now, and I'm going to take it by the horns. But then something happens, and she shows this vulnerability that you probably wouldn't get with most characters like this.
And then we have the late Diana Rigg. This is her final performance on film, and it might be a great performance. And this could very well be a perfectly great performance for her to go out on.
It's just something to, and we can't really say much because just about most of the things we could say are spoilers. Like, we can say other things like there's these very trippy sequences featuring like monstrous, ghoulish ghosts, which makes this a perfect movie to come out around so close to Halloween.
Especially since there is a scene that takes place at a Halloween party.
And I love the designs of the ghosts because they show up as these formless blobs of evil that just show up and just terrify the hell out of everyone in the audience.
And then there's of course the character of John, played by Michael Ajayo, I think is how you pronounce it. I really liked that character.
Maybe he would. I think the interesting thing is that while Ellie and Sandy are pretty much the most complex of Edgar Wright's female characters, John is kind of a stock nice guy, which I think did on purpose, where it's like, no, this time the guy is just going to be a stock character.
And I was thankful that it didn't end up being like a third act twist that he was a complete douchebag.
Yeah, I was so worried. There were certain points where I was so worried that this was going to be one of those horror movies where suddenly the guy who's been like just a decent person suddenly turns around and it's like, nope, he's horrible too. Everyone in this movie is horrible except for the main character, except for at least one main character. No. 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 This is the slightest spoiler, but the character of John is not a bad guy. He does not turn. There's not a sudden turn where he suddenly becomes this horrible monster. He is just a good person from the beginning, from the first time you meet him in the movie to the very last time you meet him in the movie. You see him in the movie.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of refreshing, but yeah, that was a trip to be sure. I'm gonna have some trouble sleeping tonight.
But it's not the most. It's not COVID, I swear. This is not the most intense horror movie that I think I've ever seen, but I think it's accurate. It's very easily a very good horror movie. It's effectively unsettling when it needs to be. It plays with tone incredibly in a way that only Edgar Wright can, and I think that with him branching out like this, it shows that he can pretty much do whatever he wants.
Like this, like you can still. There's moments where Edgar's style really comes into play. Like there's a dance sequence where you can just imagine where you're just like, how long was this shoot where it was just Thomason and Anya just hiding behind running around behind the camera to change positions for the choreography.
And it's like we said 4 years ago. Edgar Wright directs movies in such a way that I don't want to be in his head, because it kind of makes you wonder how he can be so on top of things like this, that stuff like this happens, that he can basically build an entire movie like a Swiss watch.
Yeah. But I think that's all we got to talk about right now.
Yeah. Last Night in Soho is fantastic. I still don't know if Suicide Squad has been dethroned as at least my favorite movie of the year, but it's good. But this is another good movie from Edgar Wright. It's another great movie of this year. I think it's gonna definitely be I don't know if it's gonna be a Halloween staple like Shaun of the Dead has become, but I think it's gonna be an effective horror movie for the years to come. So, anyway, guys, I think that's it for right now. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, leave in the comments what you thought of Last Night in Soho, and be sure to tune in next time when I don't wear a cape. Bye.